Hello and welcome back to coverage here at GP Seattle. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Reed Duke. It's day 3 time. That means we're in standard. Bill Chronopoulos on 9-1 playing blue-black control. Other side of the table is Mark Jacobson. Of course, the same record, 9-1 playing blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift. And that's where we're at here. This is, speaking of combos, this is a little bit of a combo-y version of this God Pharaoh's Gift deck. You see, he kicks things off with a Bomat Courier, not a card you normally associate with God Pharaoh's Gift, but this actually has the ability to take advantage of a card like that.
Right. This is definitely one of the combo decks that I was referencing. And here we have a pretty unusual start for blue-black control from Bill Chronopoulos. Looks like we might have the graphic wrong there, and he's more likely to be playing, I think it's just mono-red as I see on Crop Crasher in his hand.
I don't know. Maybe if God Pharaoh's Gift's playing Bomat Courier, maybe blue-black control is too. And Mountains.
Well, this is a fairly classic matchup. Mono-red has a lot of inherent game against the combo-esque God Pharaoh's Gift deck, both between the fast clock, but also main deck a Braid, of which Bill Chronopoulos has 3. That's going to be a key card that we'll keep an eye on for destroying Gate to the Afterlife or God Pharaoh's Gift once it actually hits the battlefield.
Treasure Mage now for Mark Jacobson.
So that means Gate to the Afterlife will be hitting the battlefield next turn. That's a really crucial card against mono-red in particular, but even just more generally, a really crucial card for the blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift deck. Outside of 4 Gate to the Afterlife and 2 God Pharaoh's Gift, almost every card in the blue-red deck is a creature, and in particular, many of the creatures are cheap creatures that can be put into the graveyard at a moment's notice, those Bomat Couriers being great examples. And that's really important because when you have Gate to the Afterlife, you get to sacrifice your Bomat Courier. That's one creature in the graveyard. You also trigger the looting ability of Gate to the Afterlife. And in that fashion, you can really fill your graveyard very, very quickly.
Right, of course, your hand going away as well. You're really turboing that Gate to the Afterlife stuff and seeing how quickly you can make it work.
Let's not forget gaining 1 life each time as well, which that really adds up against the aggression of mono-red. However, one dynamic that we're familiar with in the God Pharaoh's Gift deck, and one that's really important against mono-red, is bringing back that Angel of Invention to have a giant flying lifelink creature. You're not going to find those in the blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift deck, so it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that Mark Jacobson wins when he triggers God Pharaoh's Gift, although you'll certainly see that the blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift deck is capable of some pretty wacky and powerful stuff.
See Minister of Inquiries now. Self-mill here for Mark Jacobson. Again, trying to get these combo pieces assembled.
Already up to 3 creatures in the graveyard. That means that Mark Jacobson could potentially cast Gate to the Afterlife, sacrifice Bomat Courier, loot away a creature. Then if he has a Walking Ballista for 0, he can get up to 6. Now, of course, he doesn't have the 2 mana to sacrifice it, so we'll probably see him waiting until next turn to make a big move, but he is doing a good job setting up, and if Bill Chronopoulos doesn't have a Braid, it's going to be a tall order for him to continue fighting in this game.
Mark's going to just let his Bomat Courier die. That does, of course, put it in the graveyard. Now, I'm assuming that was done with the Gate to the Afterlife on the stack there,
Exactly,
Reed? Okay.
Exactly. Here's another one of those cheap creatures that can go to the graveyard very quickly. It's Fanatical Firebrand. That's very nice here as it can ting off Bill Chronopoulos' Bomat Courier while also triggering Gate to the Afterlife. There you see it. The key card in the Blue-Red Godpharaoh's Gift deck.
This is a really sweet deck, by the way. Any deck that runs Bomat, Courier, Fanatical, Firebrand, and Gate to the Afterlife, that is an unlikely trio, but here we are.
I'm impressed with this deck for two reasons. One is that we're pretty deep into the standard format here. These sets have been out for a long time, and this is really the debut of a brand new archetype. Of course, Godpharaoh's Gift as a card and a strategy is not new to standard, but this particular iteration of the deck is. And also, it's a very simple deck. It's got 6 non-creature, non-land cards, 4 Gate to the Afterlife, 2 Godpharaoh's Gift. The rest are just 4 of creatures. It's a very simple, straightforward archetype, and it's pretty interesting to me that it's gone under the radar for this long with so many players playing standard.
In the meantime, Mono Red, of course, in the hands of Bill Chronopoulos, a deck that we've seen plenty of in the last few iterations of Standard. A lot of potent punchers, including Hazaret the Fervent, which looks like Bill has a couple of those perhaps stranded in his hand.
One key card that we should highlight here, Marshall, is Scavenger Ground on Bill Chronopoulos' side. See his right hand sort of covering it here, but he has got 2 mountains and that really powerful desert, so he can use that to combat the graveyard of Mark Jacobson, but he's going to have to be pretty careful with his timing, as once Godpharaoh's Gift hits the battlefield, it's pretty difficult to remove it outside of having exactly a copy of a Braid.
Right.
Also, once Gate to the Afterlife is activated, there's no responding. He's going to have to preemptively exile the graveyard if he wants to make sure Godpharaoh's Gift never shows up.
Okay, it's just a prerequisite to be able to activate it that you have the 6 creatures in your yard, rather than needing them when the ability resolves. And that's probably what Bill's double-checking right now, as we see Mark Jacobson activate Minister of Inquiries. He's going to target himself with it and potentially put himself up to 6 creatures in the yard. So Bill immediately picks up Gate to the Afterlife, and he says, do I need to use Scavenger Grounds right now to set you back on time?
The answer is that Bill Chronopoulos is in a really bad spot. I don't see any way he can time it to result in a favorable exchange here. And that's pretty impressive from the Blue-Red Godpharaoh's Gift deck to have an active graveyard hate piece on the opposite side of the battlefield and just have so many ways to navigate around it. For example, had Bill activated Scavenger Ground in response to the Minister of Inquiry's ability, all it would take is Mark Jacobson sacrificing one of his Fanatical Firebrands, that's a 5th creature, loot away a 6th from his hand, then he could activate the Gate to the Afterlife. Then he puts a Godpharaoh's Gift in play, Scavenger Ground's ability exiles the graveyard, and then Minister of Inquiries might just mill a creature anyway. So it's really tough for a one-shot exile all graveyards to combat this aspect of the combo.
Yeah, especially with Mark having double Firebrand on the battlefield, meaning that he's in really good shape to make sure that that yard is either stocked with a target for Godpharaoh's Gift or to make sure he stays at that 6th creature base. Also, it must be noted here, Reed, that Bill Chronopoulos, while he does have access to Scavenger Grounds, is not really what he wants to be doing either, right? He's not applying pressure. He's losing his mana.
Right. We're focusing on this one tactical battle, this snapshot of how can I use my graveyard hate piece to the best effectiveness. But that's not even to introduce the question of how Bill Chronopoulos is going to win the game, because as you mentioned, if he sacrifices his 3rd land, he's now 2 lands away from casting any of the powerful spells in his hand, the Hazarets, the Chandras, and Mark Jacobson is the one with the dominating board presence here.
So things looking good early here in round number 11 for Mark Jacobson, but it's not quite over yet. It's getting pretty darn close.
It's getting pretty close. I'm nearly ready to call it in favor of Mark Jacobson here, so long as he navigates the situation carefully. Another key here is that Godpharaoh's Gift does not target a creature in the graveyard.
Right.
So in other words, if he moves to combat, it forces Bill Chronopoulos to pull the trigger on the Scavenger Grounds. Then Jacobson can use his Fanatical Firebrand and bring it back as a 4/4 haste creature. which, not that a 4-4 haste is unbeatable, but in a board state where Mark Jacobson is already ahead and Bill Chronopoulos is going to have to sacrifice his third land down to just 2 basic mountains, it's probably going to be enough.
So he is going to go ahead and pull the trigger here, but like you said, Firebrand can jump into the graveyard if Mark wants. Then he can go to combat. Then he'll get it back as a 4-4. His graveyard would then be empty, but it's not that hard to get it filled up. Any energy would let the Minister of Inquiry start doing its thing again.
Nice subtle play here from Mark Jacobson. Targets Kari Zev with the 1 damage from Fanatical Firebrand, which allows him to safely attack with Trophy Mage and effectively turn 1 damage into 2.
Clever stuff there from Jacobson. But here we go. God Pharaoh's Gift is going to trigger. Comes the Fanatical Firebrand back onto the battlefield. It is now a 4-4. It has haste. It's attacking alongside its friend Trophy Mage. And I'm with you now, Reed. This one's done.
So Chronopoulos looking for a Braid. That would be his best card to take out the God Pharaoh's Gift, but pretty clearly he didn't have that last turn and drew a mountain for this one. So his next best approach to the game is, okay, if Mark Jacobson can never put another creature into the graveyard, can I win this game by attacking past him, avoiding getting into combat confrontations with stuff like Trophy Mage and Minister of Inquiries, and just race?
Here's an Ipnu Rivulet activation, Reed, that's going to put 3 creatures in
Oh
the
boy,
graveyard.
we're going to see some fireworks. I guess not.
Bill Chronopoulos, not a fireworks fan.
He deprives us of getting to see Mark Jacobson's deck in action. But Marshall, what was going to happen there is Combat Celebrant was going to be returned with God Pharaoh's Gift. It was going to be exerted to give Mark Jacobson a second combat step, which means a second trigger of God Pharaoh's Gift. He was going to return Vizier of Many Faces to copy Combat Celebrant, do the whole thing again, and then return a third creature with God Pharaoh's Gift. So we were looking at, I don't know, something in the ballpark of 30, 35 damage coming from Mark Jacobson's attack.
Wow, and
turn.
You saw Bill Chronopoulos could not pick up his permanents quickly enough, and, well, he knew it was going to happen. So that's game 1 going to Mark Jacobson. Blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift. Sitting here at 9-1 currently. And he's looking to make it 10-1. He's got to win one of the next 2 games to do so. Bill Chronopoulos, all the way here from Greece. Again, he played for the Greek team at the World Magic Cup back-to-back.
Can see those distinctive red and white colors of Mark Jacobson and his Mass Drop team also appearing in the table behind them. Jarvis Yu and Ari Lax, a couple of his teammates cheering him on. Bill Chronopoulos is going to be looking to improve his chances by adding another Scavenger Grounds up to 3 and another Abrade up to 4. Other than that, he's got some small changes he can make here and there, but the game plan is pretty simple. Put on a fast clock, have a well-placed Abrade, and finish off the combo player as quickly as possible. Mark Jacobson talked about that deck building restriction of Gate to the Afterlife, having to have a very high concentration of creatures in your deck to make sure it functions properly. You saw how important it was there. Mark Jacobson had a couple of random mill activations between Minister of Inquiries and Ipnu Rivulet, and if he had gotten unlucky, say, and milled a couple lands and a couple spells, no creatures, his deck wouldn't have functioned properly, and the Blue-Red God Pharaoh's Gift players preempt that situation by it's almost all creatures other than the lands and the key Gate to the Afterlife.
I mentioned Bill Chronopoulos, having played for Greece at the World Magic Cup. They played in 2014 and had a really deep run. He was actually the captain in 2016, and they won.
Very impressive.
Yeah, that was a really intense finals. I remember it well. And Bill was interestingly, so he was the captain, and he had actually ended up playing in the deciding match, like his match ended up being the one that decided the World Magic Cup.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and normally what happens is that's a team event, and you'll get the teammates crowded around, maybe pointing something out, and Bill was like, I'm taking this one solo, gents. And he had them kind of just sit at the other table, and he just, he said he just plays better when it's just him, and he got the job done. It's really exciting. All right, quick sip of water here for Jacobson. A little more shuffling from Bill, and we're going to be into game number 2. We're in the red zone here on a Sunday. This is standard. We didn't get to watch standard yesterday, so we're kind of jumping in and seeing what's going on in standard after watching Legacy for the last few days. This is a double GP event here in Seattle.
We're in MTG red zone, which means we're right in the thick of things, getting close to the top 8. Marshall, can you give us an idea of these players standing in the tournament? What does it mean to be 9-1 in a Grand Prix?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a really good spot. These gentlemen are looking at a likely top 8 if they can pick up a few wins out of the next few rounds, and they're going to be very, very hopeful. Now, picking up your second loss does not eliminate you from top 8 contention, so they have the luxury of a little bit of wiggle room here, and even with a loss in this round, they still are very much live for top 8. With the win in this round, though, they would be 10-1 with 4 rounds to go and at least 1 loss to give. Likely a draw in the last round if they can make it to that point with that 1 loss still, and they would be guaranteed in. So this is a beautiful position to be in for both of these players. They're going to be quite thrilled to be in it. But I have to imagine, and Reed, you've been in this position many times at a GP, that they're scrapping to keep it, right? Hardened veterans of the Grand Prix scene like these two know better than to think, oh, well, I'm all good. I'm 9-1 and I'm cruising to the finish, right? These are the times when the tournaments are actually really decided.
Yeah, I would bet that both of these players have had records like this before, and they've probably had the experience of converting it into a top 8 and the experience of sort of bombing out and finishing with a minimum cash finish, or perhaps even worse than that. So this is a key turning point, and while the tournament has gone well so far, there are no guarantees. They still got to keep their level of focus high and make sure not to slip up.
And this also, by the way, is the point in the tournament where you really start seeing these matchups pop up more and more, where it's name player versus name player. It's person I've seen before. It's didn't I play you at the Pro Tour once? It's that kind of thing happening a lot more often now that you see the cream of the crop start rising to the top. Here's Mark Jacobson with Minister of Inquiries. There's a 1 drop for Bill Chronopoulos, but it does not match up well.
And it's a turn late.
So Fanatical Firebrand is just going to stand there and wave at the Minister of Inquiries while Jacobson plays an Ether Hub and passes the turn back. That's now 3 activations on the Minister as well, assuming he doesn't need the other color of mana. But here's a nice one. On-Crop Crasher. Cancel that order. Abraid's going to take it down before combat and keep that Fanatical Firebrand at bay as well. Jacobson holding on to the Minister of Inquiries here.
But you can see Mark Jacobson having a little bit of trouble with his mana. Both of those lands are painful in one way or another if he wants to produce colored mana with them.
Ooh, double trouble here for Mark Jacobson. He's got 2 Minister of Inquiries. That graveyard could be very full. Now, he does not have a 3rd land, though this deck does tend to run on not quite as many lands as you'd expect, right? I mean, they're never, like, casting Godpharaoh's Gift, right?
No, that doesn't come up so much with this blue-red version of Godpharaoh's Gift. Sometimes you see it in the white-blue version, but no, here Mark Jacobson is very much relying on the plan of filling his graveyard and activating the ability of Gate to the Afterlife. You also see a little mana troubles from Bill Chronopoulos' side, stuck on 3 mana with those very, very crucial 4 drops of the mono red deck looking him in the face. But it's not all bad news, because as we know, this mono red deck, it's not one-dimensional. It's not like some of the super aggressive mono red or mono white or mono black decks that we've seen in past standard formats, where it's just, I'm going to play a bunch of creatures in the first 3 turns of the game and hope it's good enough. This mono red deck has reach. It has single permanents capable of dominating a game, like Hazaret the Fervent, like Chandra Torch of Defiance. And with a little bit of a stumble from Mark Jacobson, if Bill Chronopoulos can slam one of those cards on this turn, he's still very much in the game.
Can't be happy with how things are going otherwise, though. There we go. Chandra Torch of Defiance has shown up, so that's good news for him. But he just had to use A Walking Ballista and a Firebrand to take down one of those Minister of Inquiries. Mark got to activate it. He does also now have Gate to the Afterlife on the battlefield.
Yeah, so this is a very dicey situation because Jacobson has an activation of Minister of Inquiries, plus he has the Minister of Inquiries dying via the Chandra's -3 ability, and he has a loot from Gate to the Afterlife, and it looks like he has now assembled the requisite 6 creatures, means he's going to be able to trigger Gate to the Afterlife, or activate, rather, Gate to the Afterlife on his turn, put Godfarer's Gift into play, and probably win the game from there.
I mean, Bill has just been a spectator for this. Ever since Gate to the Afterlife hit the battlefield both games, it's just been a huge problem for him, even with Scavenger Grounds available in Game 1. He actually has one on the battlefield now, too, but it's too late. And he's just going to be able to fire off Gate to the Afterlife and do his thing.
So you'll recall that Gate to the Afterlife can find Godfarer's Gift from any zone, hand, library, or graveyard. So I think we're going to see Mark Jacobson just bring that Godfarer's Gift that he just discarded right back onto the battlefield and go to town.
I do find it interesting, that point you made earlier, Reed, about no Angel of Invention, because we have seen these Godfarer's Gift decks. They will often fall significantly behind and then storm back with the help of Angel of Invention, either making a nice big lifelink flyer with some friends or making a huge lifelink flyer and just swapping life totals. That happens all the time. And they do not have access to that. The good news for Jacobson in this particular spot, he's at 18 somehow against the mono red deck, just cruising to the finish here. And here goes, he's just going to do a quick count to make sure that there's 6. There's even a Godfarer's Gift in the yard already, so he doesn't have to do the whole shuffle thing. And he's just going to bring back a Walking Ballista. Of course, it has haste, and it's a nice big 4/4. It's going to take down Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and leave Bill Chronopoulos with not a lot going on. Now, he does have a Scavenger Grounds. He could empty out the graveyards and sort of force Mark Jacobson to find more ways to get creatures in the yard. But the problem is that his deck is designed to do just that, and he has a 4/4 going already. Might be too late for Bill here.
You brought up a great point a moment ago, Marshall, about the difference between the white-blue Godfarer's Gift deck that tends to fall behind and then make a comeback with Angel of Invention. This blue-red deck doesn't necessarily have quite as easy a time coming back from a losing situation. However, the flip side of that is basically every card in the deck is a cheap creature, so it's a lot less likely to fall behind in the early turns. And you actually have seen in these 2 games Mark Jacobson deploy more spells in the first 3 turns of the game than his mono-red opponent, and consequently stay at a nice high life total, never fall behind in the first place, and push an even board state into a victory once he gets Godfarer's Gift into play.
So Bill is going to use Scavenger Grounds here. He's not actually sacrificing it to itself, but you don't have to. Any desert will do, and away go the graveyards. Mark Jacobson will not be getting a free creature out of his yard, though he is still hammering away with that Ballista.
He did have a window, if he would have liked to sacrifice Ipnu Rivulet after Scavenger Grounds ability resolved. But he's doing so well in this game that I don't think it's necessary to even risk that minor possibility that he might mill 4 lands and have to say go without making a play. Instead, he just cast a creature from his hand. That's fine.
Is it a Warkite Marauder here? Looks like he's really doing it up big now. Of course, that's a 2/1 with flying when it attacks. You can have creature lose all of its abilities and become an 0/1 until end of turn, making blocking very difficult. And Bill is once again going to have to settle for a pretty mediocre turn here. Carry Zev, Skyship Raider, go is all he can muster. And Mark would love really any way to get something in his graveyard. And he's just going to go ahead.
This is going to be a cool one here, Marshall. Mark Jacobson points 1 damage at Kari Zev which allows him to eternalize or
That is
effectively
nasty.
eternalize the Walking Ballista via God Pharaoh's Gift, then shrink it down to a 0/1 creature with Warkite Marauder.
And it has 1 damage on it still, so away it goes. And all Bill Chronopoulos can do is show him a trio of Hazaret the Fervents that he's not going to be able to cast, and Mark Jacobson with blue-red God Pharaoh's Gift is going to improve to 10-1. But as we described in the middle part of the game there, Reed, Bill Chronopoulos still in fine shape for top 8. He is going to need to draw a little better than that if he's going to make the top 8, though. So great stuff, and a really neat deck here in Standard, and one that's a little bit new to the scene, as you said. Kind of interesting. I find that fascinating that generally speaking, when it comes to Standard, things kind of settle down, and then it's more a rotation of which deck should I be playing this week, not is there a new deck on the scene. But, you know, at least relative to Standard, this blue-red deck is newish.
Yeah, it is really cool. There have been various times, not just one time, that I thought the Standard format had sort of been solved or reached an equilibrium where we knew what decks to expect. And several times that equilibrium has been broken. Early on, it seemed like Mono Red was going to be the best deck. Now it's taken a position as just one of many pretty solid archetypes. Then we thought the Scarab God was the dominant strategy. You had to be Grixis or Blue-Black featuring the Scarab God. But no, there's a wide variety of things possible in Standard, and as we're learning, potentially some stuff that's still unexplored.
Yeah, this is actually one of the best Standard formats we've had in a while. Very diverse and pretty evened out. I've really enjoyed it. We've got an interview lined up right now with Mark Jacobson down in the feature match area. Mark, it's Marshall and Reed in the booth. Nice work on the victory there, my friend.
Thank you. How's it going over there?
Great. So we were just talking, Reed and I, about the God Pharaoh's Gift deck that you decided to sleeve up and bring to the table. A relative newcomer to Standard. Have you been playing it for a while?
About a week and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, I first saw Simon Nielsen stream with it a little while ago, and I thought about how sweet the deck was. And then Ben Friedman came up with the Warkite Marauder tech, and that kind of put it over the top.
So what's the technology with the Warkite Marauder?
So Warkite, one, is a creature in a deck that needs a very dense amount of creatures, but you attack with it, make their Scarab God a 0/1 with no abilities, and then, just casually use a Ballistic counter. That's not going to go back to your hand. That's going to die. You can just pay 4 mana to terminate every turn, Any creature you see on the opposing side, you got Firebrands, you got Ballistas.
Now, this deck, unlike most builds of God Pharaoh's Gift, does not have access to Angel of Invention, which is kind of the way it used to come back from being behind. Do you find yourself in a position where you're far behind? Because this one seems pretty fast at getting that graveyard stocked.
Yeah, so Combat Celebrant makes a huge difference. Basically, you exert that, you get a new combat, you have a new God Pharaoh's Gift trigger. And sometimes you can come out of nowhere. I've just domed my opponent for tons of damage out of nowhere. No creatures in the bin, a few in play, and then just discard some Celebrants, go to town.
That is, we actually almost saw that, didn't we, Reed?
Yeah, Bill conceded in game 1 when the writing was on the wall, but could you just give us a brief idea of what would have happened if you had actually played out that turn to its natural conclusion?
I would attack with all my creatures, shrink whatever I want with the Marauder, exert the Celebrant, all the other creatures on tap, get another combat, bring back a Vizier, copy the Celebrant, attack with that, exert, untap everything else, which includes the other Celebrant, which can't exert again, but it's going to attack again.
So it's not an infinite combo, but 3 attack steps with God Pharaoh's Gift in play should usually be good enough.
Should do it.
Yeah, just shut the door on it. Well, wow, this is a sweet brew you've got going here, Mark, and a really nice run in the middle part to late part of the tournament. You are sitting at X-1, starting to kind of come over the horizon on looking at that top 8. Keep it together, man, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, that deck is really sweet, Reed. I'm actually kind of excited about it. A friend of mine, a local friend of mine, Charles Wong, who was playing it here as well, and I had a chat with him yesterday about what he liked about it, and he was like, I think this deck's really good. Like, he was X-1 coming from day 1 as well. I don't know how he's doing today, but it's a sweet one. All right, we're going to be taking a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have more MTG Red Zone here from Sunday in Seattle. Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at GP Seattle. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That's Reed Duke. Thanks so much for coming along for Standard. We've been watching Legacy the last few days, but today we're all up to date and we're watching Standard. We just saw one of the hot decks of the format, Blue-Red Godpharaoh's Gift, with Bomat Couriers and all that nonsense. I mentioned Charles Wong a little earlier, who's also playing the deck. I had a chance to chat with him about the deck yesterday. I just saw him. He's standing right over there. He's X-1 still as well.
Wow.
So, yeah, he said that he felt like, anecdotally, the conversion rate on the deck was quite high. A lot of the people were playing it are still into day 2.
I'm getting that impression as well.
Yeah, so maybe the deck of the tournament? I don't know. It's a little early. We'll figure it out as we go. But for now, we've got Time Walk Magic. Let's head on down. All right, we've got Shota Yasooka versus Christoffer Larsen. This is a nice one, by the way, because, Shota in the Hall of Fame, Chris Larsen, we see him at the Pro Tours all the time, playing with some of the big European Pro Tour testing teams. And it looks like Sultai Constrictor here for Chris.
So again, 2 players that traveled quite a long way to get here to compete at Grand Prix Seattle.
Yeah, both opposite directions as well. Chris coming all the way from Europe and Shota from Japan. Meeting in the middle here in Seattle.
Yasooka with a different take on Godpharaoh's Gift, blue-white. So whereas the blue-red Godpharaoh's Gift deck is very much about Gate to the Afterlife, white-blue Godpharaoh's Gift doesn't play Gate to the Afterlife. Instead, just the idea is to fill your graveyard via strategic planning, chart a course, and use Refurbish to get Godpharaoh's Gift into play way ahead of schedule and win, often with that Angel of Invention that we've been talking about.
Here's chart a course for Shota. Somehow it's better that he gets to discard in some situations.
Often, yes.
Yeah, in this case, it ends up just being a plains that he gets rid of, although sometimes you'll see them discard creatures so they can get them back later. But this is a much more controlling version of Godpharaoh's Gift, right?
Yeah, especially true to form, Shota Yasooka, the control master, takes a very controlling slant on the archetype, featuring main deck Fumigate, Search for Kanta. He's prepared to play a long game or combo off quickly, whichever his draw lends itself to. But I think Fumigate's certainly the card that he's going to be looking for in this game to get back in against a pretty nice start from Christoffer Larsen.
Larsen's looking good here. He's got 4 creatures on the battlefield, and Shota's going to need to do something about it. A Walking Ballista for 2 to take down the card advantage engine that Christoffer had going. Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and he still has a Ballista left over as well. As you mentioned, though, the reality for Shota is that he is going to need to use some type of sweeper effect here, because Winding Constrictor, if left unchecked, which it has been left, is just simply going to create threats that are far too big for Shota Yasooka to be able to survive for very long.
So a little shortcut here. Christoffer Larsen spent 4 mana to add a counter to Walking Ballista, which of course with Winding Constrictor on the battlefield means 2 counters. So it went up to 4, -1 to kill the opposing Walking Ballista, and crash in for 7.
And this means Fumigate or death for Shota Yasooka, but of course he has it. He is going to find himself, though, at just 4 life. And now it's up to Christoffer Larsen to reload.
Down to 4, up to 6 from the Fumigate.
Sure.
Shota was actually undefeated overnight, 8-0, but we saw him in round 1 lose this exact matchup against Sultai Constrictor. He had a couple of Fumigates, but then the Sultai player was able to stick a Bristling Hydra, and Sultai deck's very powerful and very punishing.
There's my boy Thrashing Brontodon, by the way.
Yeah, this is game 1 even, so Thrashing Brontodon, really nice techie card that's going to give Christoffer Larsen a pretty solid advantage against the actual card Godpharaoh's Gift. So double Fumigate, but let's not forget that Christoffer Larsen drew a handful of extra cards off of his early Glint Sleeve Siphoner, so he's able to rebuild pretty nicely twice. But this is it. If Shota can answer this wave of creatures, Larsen's going to be out of gas.
I mean, Larsen has now produced 3 waves of creatures for Shota Yasooka to deal with. You can't ask for the Sultai Constrictor deck to do much more than that. And when the dust fully settles, it's 1 copy of Servant of the Conduit left over. Cancel that, make it 2 copies.
Boy, and a real subtle thing about this game is Christoffer Larsen sitting there with If Near Deadlands on the battlefield. If he had a Hashep Oasis either instead or in addition to that, his clock would be significantly faster.
Yeah, whole turn. In the meantime, Shota furiously sifting through the library here. Strategic planning. What else can he find? Refurbish. There's Godpharaoh's Gift. And this is a card that you and I have been talking about a lot today. Even though we didn't actually see it in a previous match read, there's Angel of Invention. And we mentioned this exact scenario. You're way far behind. Boom. Now you're way far ahead. And that is game one going to Shota Yasooka. By the way, we should mention here in MTG Red Zone read, both of these players are at 8-2. So we're looking at an elimination match for the loser. Elimination game could be if Shota were to win it. For the loser of the match, if it ends up being Christoffer Larsen, that's his top 8 hopes evaporating. If he can win back-to-back games, though, and win this one, then he will still stay live, and it will be Shota Yasooka, whose hope for the top 8 has dwindled.
So when you say elimination match, you mean we're not going to see them in the top 8 of the tournament. Not
Correct.
that they're effectively eliminated. They can still play for prize money and some really relevant pro points.
Absolutely.
But it will be the end of the line in terms of their chance of actually taking home the trophy. Okay, Deathgorge Scavenger, a really nice one. You can tell that Christoffer Larsen was very prepared to play against Godpharaoh gift decks between the Thrashing Brontodons and the Deathgorge Scavengers. Boy, this is strange from Shota. Not that Fairgrounds Warden is an unusual card to see in the Blue-White Godpharaoh's gift deck, but it makes me wonder what the plan is to have Fumigate be such an important part of winning game one, and then to have Fairgrounds Warden in the post-sideboard game seems like a liability or a little bit of a confused plan to me, but far be it from me to question the master here.
Well, now you see what it is. It's a speed bump because he's going to chump block with it, get another creature in his graveyard, which is now going to go away, thanks to the Deathgorge Scavenger, and then he's going to Fumigate.
That
Kaboom,
works.
Back up to 21. God, these guys both play so fast. I am loving this read.
Hard to keep up.
That's good for us, right? Keeps us on our toes. Whoa, 2 Wani Constrictors, though, for Larsen. This could be absolutely explosive if Yasooka doesn't have answers to them. It wouldn't take much for Larsen to run away with this thing if these 2 Wani Constrictors are left unchecked, but you have to figure that Shota has the answer somehow.
Looks like he has his choice of 2 different 5-mana angels that he can cast. There's Angel of Sanctions.
That'll help. Let's see if he has a removal spell. He does not. It is a Walking Ballista. He's going to get a little bit of a bump from the from the Wani Constrictor, so 3 +1/+1 counters. He is going to need an additional one to kill the Angel of Sanctions, but if he can get that, it'll be pretty nice. It actually lines up beautifully, doesn't it, Reed? You can just tap out, put 2 counters on the Walking Ballista, still have it around, and kill the Angel.
Ooh, hello.
Oh, cancel that. There's a Walking Ballista now on the other side of the battlefield. Shota just taps out for his own Walking Ballista on 3, and now we have a little bit of a dance here.
Yeah, there's a lot that Shota could choose to do with this Walking Ballista. He can either kill the Constrictor or the opposing Ballista now. It looks like that's what he's going to do. Okay, so the end result of that should have been 1 damage to Shota.
Shota takes 1, right? Ooh, here's a powerful spell for this Sultai Constrictor deck. It is Hadana's Climb. With the Constrictor out, that's 2 +1/+1 counters. He can get that thing transformed next turn and have some explosive hits of damage. The pressure is very much on Shota Yasooka to find an answer to the Wine Constrictor. The way you can do this is you can kill the Hadana's Climb, or you can kill all the creatures.
Well, if our life totals are correct here, it looks like Shota made a little bit of a reckless play there in using all 3 counters of the Walking Ballista at once, which allows Christoffer Larsen to respond by using all 3 of his own counters. Whereas if you do it one at a time, the opposing Walking Ballista will die due to state-based effects as soon as the first counter is removed. So I think if we're to believe the life totals, Shota took 2 damage more than he needed to in that situation.
Oh, really? They just said, I'll throw 3 at this, and then Larsen said, okay, I'll throw these ones
Yeah,
at you.
Shota's life total was incremented -3 when the Ballista's traded, and then -4 when the Winding Constrictor dealt damage.
Yeah, he was at 21. Huh. That's weird. Okay, Larsen has another Walking Ballista. This one's also going to have 3+1/+1 counters on it, but now the Hadana's Climb's going to trigger. It could have 5.
This is wild, Marshall. We see the Godfarer's gift deck really firing on all cylinders. Shota spending all of his mana, which is 6 mana and then 7 mana on back-to-back turns. But Christoffer Larsen, the power of Winding Constrictor, Walking Ballista, and Hadana's Climb, this trifecta, he's going to be able to mow down the Angel of Invention, potentially those servos if that's what he decides to do, and he's really got a lot he can work with here. All right, so he adds some counters to the Walking Ballista. It's mandatory to transform the Hadana's Climb, even though it might have been an interesting question whether he wanted to transform or not.
Yeah, now he can pay 1 blue-green, tap it to give a creature, one of his creatures flying and double its power, but he doesn't have that mana available at the moment.
So you have to figure one of those counters is going after Angel of Invention.
Right.
We don't know exactly what he's going to want to do with the rest. He could kill the 2 servos and the Angel and attack for 6 damage, keeping Walking Ballista around with 2 counters. But I think maybe he wants to take a more patient approach and fight through those servos the old-fashioned way. Oh, the Ballista can attack, of course. It has Summoning Sickness.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Shota ended up chump blocking with Servo, which Christoffer Larsen did allow. He's going to get back his Angel. Oh, I spoke a little too soon. He's going to get back his Champion of Wits.
Setting up for hopefully a powerful next turn. He really wants to get Godpharaoh's Gift into play to make sure his deck is doing exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, one of the Godpharaoh's Gifts were taken care of, but he could easily find another one. He has enough mana to cast it as well. Puts another Angel of Sanctions in the graveyard. He has 2 of them in there, I believe. No, maybe just the one. At any rate, that could be a thing he could do next turn as well.
So, Winged Temple of Orazka online, making it challenging for Shota to block here.
Yeah, Shota's looking at his blocking options. I don't think he's really liking what he's seeing here. The Walking Ballista also represents an extra chunk of damage. Probably a lethal attack from either, right? Let's see. 2, 4, that would be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Not on the board. If both creatures get through, it's comfortably lethal.
Right.
If only one gets through, it's not.
But boy, is it scary. You got to figure if one of them gets through and Larsen gets to untap with Ballista, then...
And boy, am I glad I'm not the one who has to navigate this combat step, because Christoffer Larsen has multiple abilities available to him just on the board, either using his land, the Temple of Orazka, or adding 2 more counters to Walking Ballista via the 4 mana ability. That's not to mention removing counters from the Ballista or anything that might be in his hand. So there's a lot to think about if you're Shota Yasooka, and probably a lot to think about if you're Christoffer Larsen, but you at least get to wait and see what your opponent does first.
Also, when you see Shota Yasooka tank like this, you know it's complicated. We've all seen how fast he's been playing this entire match. That's how fast he always plays. And when he gets himself into a real pickle here, this is where he's going to stop. Think about it.
He is going to have to make a decision here. This is
Taking a little while. Yeah.
a bit long to take on a single decision.
Looks like he's going to stack up everything on the ballista. Larsen can activate Hidana's climb. 3, 7, 8. It still isn't quite enough. But he is going to do that. And that will kill almost everything that blocked it, leaving just the servo. Man, this would be a nice place for a sweeper from Shota. Well, he found Field of Ruin. That's going to help stem the bleeding here because the Winged Temple of Araska is a long-term problem with effectively any creature that Christoffer Larsen can come up with, and that's been solved. Now Shota just needs to stabilize this board. He's still facing down multiple threats, and he's only at 10 life. So is it going to be the Angel of Sanctions? Yeah, it looks like Larsen's predicting that, and he's going to embalm that.
You're really seeing the power of the blue-white God Pharaoh's Gift deck, which is that once you get to this stage in the game where you have all your lands available, you never run out of gas because you have so many things to do from your graveyard between Champion of Wits and Angel of Sanctions, not to mention drawing extra cards, looting, having activated abilities of your lands like Ipni Rivulet and Field of Ruin.
Shota has spent a ton of mana over the last few turns, and it has paid off for him as he's now stabilized. There's my boy Thrashy Brontodon back on the battlefield. But it isn't doing a whole lot. Angel of Invention now hits the table for Shota. He's going to make servos. Oh boy. Attacking. He feels comfortable.
That's a 4/5 Angel.
That's right. Oh, and he even gets full value on Chart, of course, and maybe even another one. Oh, boy. This is ridiculous. Now he's ahead on board and has like 6, 7 cards in hand facing Christoffer Larsen, and all he can do is top deck a land and extend the hand. Shota Yasooka navigates through a pretty complicated game and finds the victory. So, Chris Larsen, 8-3 now. Him, given that he is a professional player and he will be absolutely looking to make the top 8 here if he could, but that's probably out of reach for him now. But Shota Yasooka still very much in the thick of it with 2 losses. He doesn't have any wiggle room, but not that many rounds to go here from Seattle, and if he can run it up, he will find himself in the top 8, and of course he's a force to be reckoned with anytime we see Shota late into a tournament.
Yeah, no kidding, and he came in undefeated overnight, a little bit of a stumble at the start of the day, but he's right back on track, and you see with a really powerful deck and the way he's been playing, it would be no surprise to see him making the top 8.
No, not at all, and especially when he's playing so well, right? It's always fun to watch Shota navigate through those situations. We've got a good chance to do that here in Seattle. We are in MTG Red Zone, which of course means that we're going to be bringing you as much Magic as we possibly can down the stretch. We're working our way up to the cut to top 8. We're not quite there yet. We've still got a few rounds to go, things to get shaken up as far as standings go. We've got a little bit more Time Walk Magic for you. We're going to get that queued up shortly and bring you a little bit more of actual in-match Magic before we take our break. The players are, of course, still playing out on the main floor, and let's jump into game number 2 of Andrew Cuneo, never heard of him, versus Carlos Romao, former world champion.
It's exciting for me to get to see my teammate on Team Ultimate Guard.
Oh, you know Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew and I play together all the time.
Oh, that's cool. He's like a friend of yours from back home, or?
Yeah, Andrew's my teammate. He's from the East Coast. He's been around a long time. But as a fan of Magic, this is also a really exciting matchup for me, as Carlos and Andrew Cuneo are both control masters, stretching back all the way to the early 2000s. Carlos Romao, world champion way back in the day with blue-black control, Psychotog at the time, and Andrew Cuneo, the creator of a deck called Cuneo Blue, which was effectively
all counters.
All counters, what we call draw go, mono
Yeah.
blue control with tons and tons of counter spells.
Yeah, we're going to come back to us for just a second. As you can see, our video having a little bit of trouble there. Of course, I'm giving Andrew a hard time. He's been playing Magic since the game's inception, and he's one of my favorite players to watch. You mentioned Shota being kind of the control master. Now, Andrew's broadened his horizons a bit, but he is certainly known, at least archetypically, as a hardcore control player. In fact, I got a chance to see him play recently. He was playing, must have been Legacy in one of the team events or something, and he had his counterspells with him. And these were the original like beta counterspells that he used to play Cuneo Blue, the deck that had all the counters.
That's pretty cool.
And I asked him, how many spells do you think you've countered with these exact copies of Counterspell? And somebody said 2,000. He said, I don't think it's quite that many. I haven't got to dust them off in a while, but it's in the hundreds. Let's just say that, maybe even up into the
If you ask the same questions about his digital counterspells on his Magic Online account, the number might be in 5 figures.
Yes, that's right. And it's funny because he actually goes by Gainsay on Magic Online, and if you're a blue control player, you'll get the reference there. Gainsay being a card that you want against other blue control players as well. So, again, we're going to try to cue the video up again. We had a little bit of a technical issue there. Apologies for that, but let's try it again and see if we can't get this thing running a little bit smoother. There we go. Looking good. Now, again, we're coming in game number 2 here between Cuneo and Romao. And looks like Carlos is the one who's up a game. And again, our players are both at 8-2 and fighting for their top 8 life.
So this is a blue-black control mirror. Blue-black Scarab God, as we're calling it. But this is as classic as it gets. Counterspells, players looking to make land drops in the early part of the game, resolve some card drawing if they can, but really you don't want to be the one to act carelessly, walk into a trap, make the first move, and have your spell get countered. These players are probably going to be very, very patient if they can be.
That's right. We see Search for Ascanta put on the stack, but Andrew Cuneo snaps it off with a negate. No, sir. We know how good of an advantage that can give you in the late part of the game, especially in these control decks. Looks like we skipped ahead just a hair there, but maybe there's a Field of Ruin.
Your time machine's going haywire, Marshall.
Yeah, I didn't beta test it perfectly. Is Carlos thinking about playing Disallow on the Field of Ruin trigger?
Wow, that's a nice play, effectively transforming Disallow into Stone Rain.
Stone Rain, yeah.
Because the Field of Ruins, sacrificing the Field of Ruin is part of the activation cost, and getting the basic land is part of the resolution. But Andrew has negate to take care of that, so he's going to continue to develop his mana fairly nicely. It's Argel's Bloodfast that they fight a counter battle over, and Andrew Cuneo is able to stick it. So that's a permanent that's going to give him a really nice long-term advantage. However, it does open a window for Carlos to main phase Glimmer of Genius here. You'll see that he actually chose to do that rather than play his Scarab God, which really shows you how much these players prioritize having a full hand, having resources, rather than just play out a Scarab God that may or may not get 1-for-1 by a Vraska's Contempt. Funny, Marshall, I spoke to Andrew this morning, and he had practiced a fair amount with this blue-black control deck, but he said he wasn't that comfortable with his sideboard. He hadn't ironed it out as much as he normally does for a tournament like this. And he made the realization, actually, that he had too many cards to bring in for the control mirror. He was almost too well prepared for the matchup.
Too many game saves.
Having to take out, cards that were pretty effective in the main deck.
That's really funny.
But yeah, he lost game 1 there. But after sideboarding, you got to figure he's pretty comfortable both in terms of the way his deck is configured and the way he's going to be able to play the matchup.
All right. Well, it ended up being that Carlos won. Sorry about that. Our video started to act up a little bit on us, and also we've got to go to a short commercial break. So we'll get that addressed, and when we come back, we'll have more live Magic here from GP Seattle. Don't you go anywhere.